Hi everybody, in this video I'll be talking about why is it important to think of your career sometimes like an apprenticeship. Now if you're changing a career or you're just getting into the industry that you want to work in, or you are in the process of acquiring new skills, it's important for you to think about your situation right now like an apprenticeship. Now, what is an apprenticeship? Apprenticeship was an olden day system of how people that wanted to enter into the industry, they would have to work for somebody that was already inside there. And what they would do is they would observe and they would take on tasks that was assigned to them. And after a while, they would observe, do things over and over again, practice more observation. And after a while, they would start taking much more heavier tasks and eventually somewhat get to a level where they were able to enter this industry independently as much as possible. Now, why is it important for us to think about our career sometimes like a process of apprenticeship? Now, when we talk about apprenticeship, it means that we are observing from people that are doing things. And when we practice observation, we sometimes develop the reasoning and skill set as to why we do certain things. And then and also it's a way of us to learn things and pick up learning very quickly. Now, it's very important for us to think about our career sometimes like an apprenticeship process is because when we are facing fears, doubts, and confusion in certain things that we want to do, maybe we feel like we are not at the level yet, we end up developing fears about learning. And when we develop fears about learning, this somehow stagnates our growth. At the same time, if we need to learn something to progress to a certain level, but at the same time, if we fear it, that stops us basically from even attempting to try anything. And maybe at a point in time, we feel like maybe we should just abandon the idea of taking on new challenges or even taking on new responsibilities because we don't have the skill sets. Now, the reason why is it important to think of your career sometimes like an apprenticeship process is because if you think about it, from our childhood till we are young adult, we depend on our parents for survival. And sometimes the over-dependence can be a little bit difficult as you try to get into the working world where now you have to think independently as an adult and then contribute value to your team and to your company. And not only that, if we think about the way our education system is geared towards, sometimes it's a lot of us consuming something that's inside a book, and that information in the book may be pretty much dead. And when we develop a very passive way of consuming information and not reacting or challenging it, that also makes us, be people who are very passive. We don't challenge ideas. We don't think of ways to do things differently. And now once we have entered the working world, chances are sometimes, we end up making mistakes. Now, when we enter the working world, now that tables have turned, now we are in the situation of not just applying the theories that we learned through university. Now we have the challenge of dealing with people in the working world, dealing with multiple personalities, dealing with multiple challenges, multiple workloads that come to us at different points in time. And the main thing that we have to learn as we enter the working world is this, that we have to be able to deal with criticism and feedback, as well as be able to work with other people with different personalities and different working styles altogether. Now, if you think about it this way, if we think about our career path like an apprenticeship, basically apprenticeship is the process of transforming somebody who is completely new and raw to anything, not knowing anything, to somebody that has a little bit much more knowledge and is able to carry on certain tasks. And we have that mindset that we are in the process of transforming ourselves to be someone better. Then, we are able then to look at our deficiencies, like our lack of patience, our lack of discipline, our lack of focus, and we sort of think about how can we get more focus, how can we get more discipline, how can we achieve more and concentrate further on. And now, at the end of the day, we think about career something like a process of apprenticeship. We end up choosing places that we can learn the most. Now, the importance of why we choose the place where we can learn the most is this. Skill sets is something that we can offer to the industry. At the same time, if you think about it, industries are forever changing. So if, let's say you entered the working world thinking you want X amount of salaries, but you don't have the skill sets to defend that sometimes makes you a little bit unreasonable. That makes you pretty much unreasonable to your future employers because you don't yet have the ability to give them value, yet you're demanding a lot. So it is important for, I think, as a general rule, for anybody that's entering an industry or just starting working, important for them is to figure out where are the places that they can learn a lot from. What are the bosses or colleagues they can learn the most from? And basically siphon out as much as you can. At the same time, when you're working, you're getting paid for that. So I think that is pretty much, quite an important concept to actually think about and also implement in our day-to-day life. Now that we talked about apprenticeship, now that we talked about why is it important to have apprenticeship, now there are 3 steps of apprenticeship. Now the 3 steps is the first step is being passive. By being passive, it means that you observe and absorb as much as possible. And what that means is this: when you're observing the rules and procedures of what governs the success within the company. What is the things? How are things being done? The culture, basically. Now, when we do that, when we are being passive and we're observing, we also pick up the certain power relationships that work within the organization as well. And where is the communication flowing from? How do we navigate working with different people with different working styles? At the same time, it's very important for us not to try to pin moral judgments on the other people, and that is how, when you observe certain things, you get into less disagreements with other people. You start to observe the ways of working. You start to figure out in what way can you work harmoniously with other people. And now you may be asking, why is this such an important thing to observe and analyze and figure out how things work? And that is because when you understand your environment, you get to navigate it much more carefully and avoid costly mistakes. Now, what I mean by navigate situation is this. In job environments right now, we're dealing with people of multiple personalities, multiple working styles. And if you do not observe how people do things differently and how people work, sometimes you may feel frustrated and sometimes you may get into arguments with people. And I think, the general principle about working is this: when we are paid to do work, we are paid to solve problems. We're not paid here to cause unnecessary stress for our bosses by getting into fights with our colleagues. At the same time, we're not paid by our bosses to get into fights with our clients as well. I think we are paid to solve problems, to get things done as much as possible in an efficient and effective way. And so that means is that you should be able to develop the ability to understand and observe different environments around you. And once you have developed the ability to observe things that are unfamiliar around you, then you can begin to sort of figure out solutions of how you combat those things as well. And that's why I feel that that's why when you operate on the basis of cultivating the skill set of observation first, then only you start to think about ways of how you can really actually fix problems. And that is, you're finding solutions based on things you have encountered and observed. So I think it's a pretty good skill to have. Now, the second level of apprenticeship now is going to the active level. In this level, you learn through repetition and you learn through hands-on work. Now, it's all good and well to study how to do things from Udemy or free courses online, even YouTube. But you will not be able to test how much you know of something unless you do something. And that means is that you should focus on the one skill that you can master immediately. And you should pay attention until you master that skill. And once you master the skill, then you can look on other skill sets that you can learn to also complement what you have learned. Now, it's important to understand in this active level that yes, at times learning can be tedious. At times learning may be something that's a little bit painful or a little bit boring. However, it's important for us to understand that it's natural for us to feel feelings like that. However, instead of shutting down or giving up, it's important for us to just stick it out and get through this phase. Because when we do that, when we face situations that makes us want to give up, but we don't, it also toughens us as a person and also gives us self-respect on ourselves, that we can toughen ourselves, we can get things done, and we're able to push through when even we feel like giving up. Now, this is important because once you get active in the way you learn things, essentially what you're doing is you're getting familiar with what you're trying to do right now. Second is you're trying to analyze in what ways you can do better. Number 3 is you detach yourself so you can observe in what ways you're performing. And when you are able to detach yourself, that's the way that you are viewing yourself to the way other people view you. For example, the way other colleagues view you or the way your bosses view you as well. And when you do that, you're able then to see, are there any weaknesses? Are there any gaps that you need to fill? Are there any deficiencies that you need to correct? An important thing for us to cultivate, I believe in this sense, is self-reflection. And self-reflection only can occur, I believe, is at the active stage. Active stage is when you have done something repeatedly that you know how to do things, then you can further deepen your understanding of why you do them and then think about ways you can improve on your on the things that you do. And usually, and surprisingly in this book actually it talked about to get to this level takes about 7 to 10 years, and I think it's a fair assessment. I think most of the time when we first enter job enter our first job, we pick up new skills that we learn, and we may be raw, and sometimes people train us. After that, we sort of take all those skills that we learn to our different jobs or different industries, and then we begin to see like other ways for us to improve and reflect upon ourselves. And that usually comes after like a 10-year period, I think. Now, the next level from active is mastery level. Now, mastery level means that we are moving into a phase where in our life that we are actively trying a lot of things out, and also we're gauging what are the knowledge that we have learned so far and are there any gaps. And when we do that, we have to actively remind ourselves that this is a phase. If we ever want to get to a mastery level, we have to constantly push ourselves. It's not being a master level is not about getting a position from somebody and then you're recognized as a master. Rather than that, is actually taking up challenges even before someone gives you that position, so that you can be well prepared and you can actively execute when the time comes when you're given a new position. Now, this is something I learned throughout my career, was this I remember a team manager sharing that, if you want to aim for a next position itself, right now you have to start to prepare. You start to gauge your knowledge. You have to push and initiate for actions and take on certain things so you can assess yourself whether you are ready or not to get to the next level in terms of a career, for example, a manager or a senior manager role. Basically, this level of mastery, what it does is that it actively tests your sense of fear. It actively tests your ability to test yourself and be objective. And I think what I've come to understand from the bosses I worked with is that they're very open for people to sort of give them input and feedback on how they could do things better. And I think, when you get to the mastery level, that also comes with a sense of humility. There comes with a sense of, yes, even though you probably have quite a good working knowledge and have a better overview compared to maybe the people that work for you, at the same time, because of that humility, in a sense that we tell people, I'm still open to feedback, I'm still open to improving, that also does trickle, that sort of culture, when you have that as a person, trickles down to the people that work for you. When they see you're totally being humble and have humility to learn and improve yourself, they also feel like they have no excuse but to also try and improve themselves. And I think there's a benefit of actually striving to be a better person and gaining mastery in your career, is that as you do better, you also inspire people that work for you, and that also does inspire them to be better human beings as well. Now, this book also talks about strategies of how can you be better in this apprenticeship level. The first strategy is that you should value learning. Now, it's important for us to value learning over money, because if you're first starting out in your career or you're transitioning into different industries, you should probably realize that the people that you can learn from during the transition period will help you a lot more in the long term. So sometimes you have to forgo the short term in order to win in the long term. And that means that when you're placed in certain organizations and even teams where you can learn a lot, that is a time where you're being paid at certain time you can learn a lot. So as much as you develop those skills yourself, chances are down the line, if you're better at improving yourselves, this is a long-term strategy this is a strategy that will pay off in the long term. Now, the second strategy is you have to always expand your horizons. And what that means is that you should be looking actively in how to improve and think about ways of you should be hungry for more knowledge, hungry for new experiences, hungry for ways of how you can improve as a person, how you can improve. And when you see something that's being done by your colleagues, how can you then further replicate that success into what you're doing right now? Number three strategy is you should revert to the feeling of inferiority. Now, when I say that, what I mean is this: you should feel like there are a lot of people around you that know more than you, and when that happens, you shouldn't feel inferior. However, you should be able to put yourself to a situation where you're eager to learn everything from them. And I think that when you have that mindset of being eager to learn everything, suddenly everything becomes a learning session. Every single interaction becomes a learning situation. And for some people that are very eager to learn, I've noticed that they do is that they set up like a work diary. They set up the things that every single day, if they can recall what is being discussed around them through their colleagues, maybe the colleagues have a problem and other colleagues help them, they overhear conversations like this. They then take note of those conversations and write down, reflect on them. That's how you can fast track your learning. Sometimes it's not about you facing problems and then you trying to figure out around them. Sometimes the learning can be passive around you. Just because you sit in a company right now, you're open to listen to conversations. How do people solve problems? What problems people face? What are the potential situations that we should avoid and things like that? So I think that when you have that kind of mindset that other people know more than you, sometimes you are just opening up your ears and opening up your eyes to listen as much as you can and siphon out all that you have learned, and then that's how you learn a lot more quicker. The fourth strategy is this: you should trust the process. Now, trusting the process comes with a little bit of leap of faith, because whenever we're learning something, let's say we have now started working in this industry we work for, sometimes around the lines that we face frustration and we sometimes question ourselves. Maybe our life would have been easier with a simpler job, with less, challenges, with less learning difficulty and things like that. And yes, it's normal for us to feel frustration. But I think what is important is that we have to understand learning and getting better to a point where you're being at a master level industry takes time. And before that can happen, you have to make the investment of time, attention, and effort. And yes, it's normal to face frustration. However, it's important to learn how to channel that frustration over to things that drive you to do better as a person. Because if you're not able to channel the frustration over, sometimes it backfires and you feel discouraged and then withdraw. And I think when you withdraw, that's the time where you take less initiative, you take less action, and therefore you're doomed, to be stagnant in your growth. Number 5 is the strategy of move towards resistance and pain. Now, I believe this strategy was very interesting when I read it, because this strategy says that you should learn to be your worst critic. Instead of waiting for other people to point out your flaws or potential drawbacks, you should be able to have the objective view and view things in your perspective in a way that how can you do things better. For example, let's say if there's no deadlines, then you should know how to enforce certain deadlines and set certain deadlines for yourself. And I believe that people who have reached the pinnacle of their career, they have the kind of sense of ability to criticize their own selves objectively, and they also set very high standards for themselves in terms of accuracy, in terms of quality of work, in terms of the way they would navigate their interactions with the stakeholders and clients that they have. So in order to get to the level of mastery, it's important right now, we should all be cultivating the sense of being able to move through resistance and pain. At times, it's painful for us to receive criticism about our work from other people. It's painful for us sometimes to see that there are things that we lack compared to other people. So as a practice, I think is rather than wait for somebody else to criticize or give us feedback, it's important for us to sort of cultivate the ability to view and criticize our own work so that we can constantly improve, and we improve at the speed that other people find that that's amazing. And I think when other people find the way we improve at a very faster rate compared to other people, then that's a sign of where respect and admiration and also even being rewarded actually comes into place. Now, the final strategy I found also very interesting and also very important to understand is this: apprentice yourself in failure. What it means is that you should accept that failure shows you there are things that are not working right now. Instead of looking at failure as something very scary or something very fearful that you should avoid at all costs, failure is something for you to understand. Now, when something doesn't work, instead of feeling down, it's okay to feel down and upset and disappointed, but more importantly, is there certain lessons that you can learn from failure? And the thing about failure is this. Now, there are two kinds of failure. Failure number 1, you never try because you're afraid, and because you're afraid, you never learn. And because you never learn, you never do anything, you stagnate, and that is the ultimate failure. Now, the second type of failure is failure that hits you in the short term. And it's normal sometimes when we are maybe dealing with a huge project, we deal with repeated failures. We try A, B, C, D, E, F, G up to Z in terms of solutions, yet we still fail. Now, the difference between this failure and the failure number 1 is this. Failure number 2 means that you've tried a lot of things. However, your ability not to give up makes you toughen up as a person. And when you toughen up as a person, that is when you develop a sense of discipline and perseverance that other people do not have. Now, on average, we tend to think about people who have discipline and perseverance as some God-given superhuman talent that they have, without realizing these are the people that face a lot of failures throughout the line, except that they don't give up. So if we want to build ourselves as people who are disciplined and have perseverance, chances are we should be willing to accept a lot of failures, and also realize that, while we accept a lot of failures, by us constantly trying new things, by us trying to troubleshoot things, by us trying to keep a positive attitude and persevere no matter how difficult things are, we are eventually going to be someone who has a lot of discipline and perseverance, and that will help us in the long term as well. So in the next video, I'll be talking about the mentor dynamic and how having a mentor is pretty important in your working life, and also strategies of how you can find a suitable mentor.